okay, as that appears. Eric is an enterprise sales executive at SeekOut.io. And Eric can actually go way back, I want to say almost 20 years, maybe even more than 20 years. He's been a recruiter for at least that long, has been training recruiters around the globe, helps recruiting professionals with new and innovative ways to solve common problems. And I can attest to that personally, as he has helped me solve many common problems. And I've learned a great deal from him over the years. In fact, we have worked on several projects together in various environments. So Eric, we see your slides, but we don't see your video. Can you say something so I can make sure that we can hear you?
Yep. Can you hear me? Can you hear me okay?
Okay, we can hear you. And
Excellent.
you
Excellent.
just came into focus. All right.
Excellent.
Thanks, Eric. So Eric is here to tell us a little bit about, are you sure you want to do it that way?
And Shally,
take it away,
please don't hesitate to jump in, Shally. We've been doing this a long time together, so your input is useful and valuable. I have about 20 minutes to quickly kind of share some ideas around diversity and what recruiters tend to do that sometimes is unintended bias. You know, they build searches and they sometimes don't always do it in the way they were intending. So I want to talk a little bit about, you know, are your search strings that you're building, are they biased? SeekOut has a phenomenal search tool that helps recruiters find hard to find people. And all the tools that you're using can help you find hard to find people if you use them with a little bit of finesse and get under the hood. So today I want to talk a little bit about not only our tool, but LinkedIn Recruiters product, and all general search that you might be doing in your applicant tracking system that might uncover inclusive candidates. You might be missing some terrific people because of unintended bias, things that you don't realize you're doing. And I want you as managers, if you're managing people like this, to really be able to see and pick up some poor search practices so that you can make those changes in your team. So it's important to me that you kind of look at inclusion as diversity inclusion as just not gender and race, but also broadening the pool of candidates as broad as possible to include things like contractors and permanent employees. I was a contractor for many years before I became a permanent employee. There are many people who would prefer to be permanent staff members who are unfortunately stuck on contracts because of COVID and other issues, and they would love to become full-time permanent employees, but their profile might have been profiled as a contractor, and therefore you might be ruling those people out inadvertently and not really thinking about that. You might be ruling people out who are unemployed because you are only looking for people with a current title. And I'll show a little bit later, but when someone is honest on their LinkedIn profile or honest on their resume and puts an end date on their current job that maybe was a month ago, maybe it was a day ago, but if they end date their current project or job, then they are not currently in that job. So therefore, if you're looking for people with current title, they have no current title. It's void, it's blank, they don't have it. You didn't say looking for last, most recent title, you said current title. So making sure you're not losing great unemployed candidates that want your jobs, that are very inclusive and might be some of the underrepresented minorities that you're looking for. Let's make sure we're not losing those good people. And I'll show some examples of both those, kind of before and after shots. Okay, I want to make sure that you have different ways of doing searches in different places. We talk about categorization in different search categories where we search, channels, we'll call them, being able to look here, there, and everywhere. But the fact is, even in one channel, it's very important you do different iterations, or what I call search sets. So I don't believe one search will ever do it all. Even if you do a great search, there is the complementary not function to find everybody who has some of the things not what you're looking for that might be very, very complementary. So making sure that you do search sets, not just one search and be done. I also then want to talk a little bit about, increasing and adding more terms that will be helpful to increase the set. Most people think the more terms you add, you're restricting your set. And that's true. If you use an and statement or an inferred and, you can make your pool smaller and smaller and smaller with the more words you add. But if you use the or statement, if you use parentheses, if they're supported on the search tool that you're using, then you can build a very inclusive set because you're expanding the locations, you're expanding the titles and the pedigrees and the industries and skills and possibly even employment type to be a broader swath, not just a particular city with a particular company that is your competitor in a particular title with a particular skill set. So that's kind of what I want to show here. It's kind of go beyond the obvious searches and build your searches, because if you increase your total pool, then when you start reviewing the pool and you find underrepresented minorities in the pool, it's from a bigger pool. So don't restrict it too soon. Build a big pool and then use your other tools to find out if you are going to increase your diversity needs in your company. So here's a simple example. I think a lot of people don't really go through this. If you have preferences, and most of us have preferences, even if the hiring manager doesn't give you the preferences, your company might have diversity and inclusion preferences and even need to hit certain numbers for submittals or for interviews before a manager can select the final candidate. So if you have preferences, but they're not must-haves, then it's important that you think about how to do searches so that you can include those must-haves always. They're always in the must-haves, but the preferred can come in and out of the search set. So how many searches do you need to do if you have 3 preferred attributes? In my example, it could be a competitor's name, it could be a degree or a person, and a local person. Okay, but it could be a language skill, it could be a platform skill, it could be you prefer a veteran. So whatever your 3 preferred attributes are, just realize in this example, there are only 3. And in this case, I made it real easy. There's only 1 must-have. We're never that fortunate. Usually there's 2 or 3 must-haves. But the answer is simply this: 8. You must do 8 searches. That means one of those searches has all 3 of the nice-to-have. The next 3 searches, you turn on and off one of the nice-to-haves, so you have 2 out of 3. And then you get 1 out of 3 for the next 3 searches, turning 2 of the other ones off. And the last one has none of the 3. So literally, that is 8 searches you have to build. And I don't know very many recruiters that take the time to build the 8 searches so that you can turn on and off some of the priorities and preferences. So some of the tools can give you preference searches and you can do it differently, but most recruiters just turn must-haves on and off. So let me give you an example of some of this where you can increase your pool with some examples. And Shally, feel free to jump in here if you want to. Hardware. Okay, I'm gonna say no. All right. Now, hopefully you can see my screen. Shally, jump in if you can't. You should be able to see the desktop I have that shows a LinkedIn free account. In a LinkedIn free account where you have people search in the United States with just a single keyword. Now, a lot of people will just put in a keyword with no parentheses or brace. Shally, can you see that screen okay? Perfect. Okay, nod, yes, you can speak, yep. Whatever. Okay, hop in here because you're gonna be I'm gonna make you part of this because you're helpful on this. We did this for many times with many groups. Okay, so if you just have a single title, you're missing, look at the number up here in the upper left-hand corner, 714,000 people have those 2 words somewhere in their title. Okay, now if I put quotes around it, then I must be side by side. I like having them 2 words not side by side because this way I get software localization engineers. I might get software lead engineer. I get variations by not putting quotes around it. Okay, if I want to make it more, I can do parentheses around it, but in this case, for this example, I'm going to move on. Okay, the next search I can do multiple with or. So even in LinkedIn free, I can put full and stack. It's an implied and here inside the parentheses. I didn't put quotes around it. I could have if I wanted to. Okay, and then engineer, developer, programmer. Okay, I didn't put software engineer. I just put the word engineer because some of my other skill words might get me closer to what I want. So all the civil engineers will be eliminated. All the manufacturing and process engineers will go away when I add other words. But I'm starting off with a title of, I just need someone who's an engineer or a developer or a programmer. And maybe it's a full stack Java engineer. I'm not exactly sure, but by putting more in, now I suddenly went from 700,000 to 4 million with just adding 4 more words, 5 more words in this case. Okay, now I can then say, well, maybe I don't want those just in my title, but I can even go beyond that. Let's go to the next level and say, I want them anywhere on the page. So now I'm looking both in current title and past title, because remember what I said a few moments ago? If you only look in current title, which was that field in the keyword section, you're only looking for people who currently have that title. So somebody who is now unemployed and is president of their dog walking company in their neighborhood, or something where they just choose not to put on LinkedIn, they are end dated. So their last title is what you're going to be picking up, not their current title. Or maybe they've modified their headline, and you'll see their headline is coming up here. So the headline, even if they have end dated their title, their headline will pull up the search. So make sure you're searching either in the past title field, in the headline field, in the current title field with an or statement. Search current title or present title, or past title, excuse me, or headline, or just in this case, LinkedIn, I just do a very broad search and say, search everywhere on the page for these words, because I'm going to add other skill words and other preferences to this block in a few moments. Okay, so this is an example of someone. I don't know this gentleman. If he's on the call, I apologize if I'm embarrassing you. But the fact is, this is an example of a recruiter who is currently end dated and looking for work. This guy, if he's on the call, or if you'd like to hire him, I'm sure he'd appreciate a call. But this is an example of, in April 2021, he end dated it. If you do a search for current title, senior technical recruiter, or whatever version he has here, he's not going to surface. And I want to make sure people understand that. Current title, if end dated right here, is not a search field you can normally use. And that's important for people to understand. Also, on the free version of LinkedIn, we do have a past title field in the advanced filter. So if you do go in here and you want to say advanced filter, you can put in current, but this is a current and past title. So if you say I want someone currently at a current company and or past at a company, it combines them. So it says this guy was at Microsoft and is still at Microsoft. On the free version, you don't have the granularity that you might have on the more advanced version over here, where you can put in current or past for titles. And on LinkedIn Recruiter, you can put current or past for companies as well. And you can say past, but not current for the unemployed. So just realize that these things are subtle, but very important when you're building your searches, to have inclusive the unemployed and to include people who might be at your competitor at one time, but not as at your competitor currently, or might be a recruiter previously, but then had to take a part-time job doing something slightly out of the industry for a time being and wants to come back to the industry because they have 15 or 20 years in the industry, but they had to go pick up another job and do something slightly different for a few months. So diversity is all inclusive with those types of things. Okay, now we at SeekOut also, I'm going to show our tool for just a moment. This is what SeekOut looks like. We have the ability to also do current and past titles, but we also have the ability to say current or past titles clearly here, where we can do an or statement, but then we also have the ability to actually change it up, where you can say, I want to show career progression. They were a resource manager, but now I need them to be a resource director. So you can have a split decision here. You can say past title and then now current title. Someone who was a sourcing person and now is maybe a director of sourcing or a vice president of global sourcing might be the next, a few jobs later. Okay, so a career progression, you can actually do that. LinkedIn Recruiter and some of the other sites, and maybe even your current applicant tracking system, can't divide the two out like that. So you can split past titles with current titles. It can be very, very helpful. And of course, most will support knots, and you can knot out past titles and current titles as well. The next level beyond that, to expand the pool of candidates, is to think about proximity searching, or using a function inside your applicant tracking system. For example, Career Builder does support this. Some other sites, I believe, support the Loxo supports this. The ability to say, I need the two words not side by side, not the titles side by side, but I need them in proximity. no more than 1 word away, no more than 2 words away. So you find all the variations with words in between for past titles or somewhere on the page. They're not just randomly 2 words on the page, they're 2 words in near proximity to one another or within a certain bounding, and this number binds how close, no more than 2 words in between. If they are side by side, fantastic, but they don't have to be. You have variations and more flexibility, broadening your search, adding more diverse candidates to your pool, which might help you meet some of your initiatives. So proximity search can be fantastic for those kinds of things and can really, really help, as does wildcards. I know Munster, Career Builder, most applicant tracking systems, except for LinkedIn, does support the use of wildcards. So if you have, the ability to put an asterisk on something, or a single-digit wildcard like a question mark, put a wildcard so you get variations like engineering and engineer. Give yourself some flexibility to be able to see other people in other areas as well. So that's really what I wanted to show there. The second one I see all the time that people really mess up in their searches is location. They'll go in and they'll build a
Hey,
search.
Eric, before you
Say,
jump
yes.
to location,
Yep.
do you know if Indeed also has, you mentioned Career Builder, do you know if Indeed also has anything similar to what you're showing as far as
I know they support
including,
wildcards.
current, past, and all of them?
But I haven't used Indeed in a few years, so they keep changing. So I do not know. I do not know. I knew they used to support wildcards. I did not aware of them supporting proximity search, and I know you can put current title in, but I don't know about past. So you might have to do just like you do in LinkedIn, which is a total page search to find the past titles. And remember, most people have more past titles on their resume than a current title. So it'll change the sort order significantly. Most of us have only one current title, but I'm old. I have 10 past titles, and those are just the ones I include. So you can have many different titles on your past titles. So oftentimes I'll start my search with a past title just to get the block of candidates who have previously done some of the work I need, even though I don't know their current title, and I'll leave their current title blank because I may not be able to guess. Are they a manager? Are they a director? Are they a vice president? Are they an individual contributor? But they have a block of recruiting experience and sourcing experience I need. Or same thing with a coder. They may be a manager of software development now, but before they were a developer themselves or an engineer of themselves. So, Charlie, any experience you have there that you want to jump in with titles and the ambiguity of titles
Absolutely.
that people
I
forget?
think, yeah, it's absolutely true. I mean, you think that a majority of them are going to be pretty standard, and software engineer definitely would be a good 10, 15% of the job titles. But then there's also Java developer, Android developer, Android engineer. And so what you can do is you can look for the patterns on what the major collections of job titles are. For example, in this case, it would be engineer, developer, and programmer. They're going to include some version of those because even programmer analyst will still have the word programmer. So if you have all 3 of those and you have them in the past and current as well, then you're you're including as much as you possibly can.
Yes, and including off the pick list can be kind of a Swiss cheese approach. Notice here, I took on LinkedIn's tool, I selected software engineer, which got me the category of software engineer, which brought up 35 other titles. What is not on this title is the word developer or the word programmer, 2 of which Sally and I both agree should be on the list, but it's not included. Software developer as a phrase, but they have to have exact phrase. If you just have the word developer, they're not going to get pulled on the list. If they just have the word programmer, they're not going to be on the list. So by building a Boolean that says programmer or developer or engineer, and once again, there's a whole lot of people who are just engineers. They don't say what type of engineer they are because they're a Java engineer. So they don't have the word software engineer at all. They're just an engineer. So don't use just the pick list. Go in here, if the field says pick list or Boolean, build your Boolean so you know what you're getting. And I prefer to put even my single words in quotes, so there's no ambiguity or stemming off those things. I get exactly what I want. It's an exact match. So make sure you know if you're picking something from a pick list, you know what is coming up with those, even with the word recruiter. It's surprising how many words are missing on this list that you're looking for. For example, Do you see the word sourcer anywhere? No. No word sourcer anywhere
or
on the
talent
29 words.
acquisition consultant,
Correct.
talent acquisition specialist. Exactly.
Yes. So just don't
Yeah.
assume.
And hey, Eric, remember back at Google days, SDE and SWE and SDET and all those?
Yep. All the
Yep.
variations that individual companies use to hide their software engineers by using acronyms so that others can't find them. So just realize titles are critical in finding the right people quickly, but don't exclude people that could be great people because you didn't think about that. Location is the same way. It seems obvious. I need someone in Washington, D.C., so I select Washington, D.C. Well, if I did that, I only get 600,000 people. But if I selected, oh, there's another category called Washington, D.C., Baltimore area. Well, I'm not thinking D.C.'s in Baltimore. I'm thinking D.C.'s in Northern Virginia or District of Columbia. But okay, I'll select this. Now I get 4 million, almost 5 million people. But I can even go further than that. I can go in and say, well, I want to select a series of states. And I can select, where you can get to the train within an hour to Washington, D.C. And you'll come up with these locations. I may be off on West Virginia, but there are parts that you can get there within an hour and a half for sure. Or people, don't assume people, especially with COVID and remote work, have to be within a close drive. They might need to be just within the time zone these days, rather than the actual drive commute distance we've had in the past. So even though your job may not say relocation assistance provided, don't be assumptive that people won't reload. Location is huge, and people should have the broadest capability to move where they want to move and at least be contacted by your organization and then decide if they can afford to move or not. Renters move faster than homeowners, but the housing market is pretty good right now. People are selling their houses and making changes all the time. So you can do searches like that are broadening. Some tools like SeekOut and others also have fields like previous location. So you can see where they used to live. In this case, this gal lives in New York City, but when we click onto her profile, we can see that she used to live in Washington, D.C. in the Maryland area. So, we're keying on these fields down here that are available on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn doesn't even let you really cue in on this area here. So doing a Google X-ray search or doing some kind of search to see where did they previously live. I don't know anybody who's figured out how to do a search or hack other than SeekOut, because SeekOut is indexing and building things a little different. So previous locations can tell you people who might want to move back to the school area or back to their family or back to the area they started their career in because it's familiar to them. So just realize location can be very, very helpful in finding people that you wouldn't otherwise find and be able to locate those people a little bit differently. Shally, any thoughts on location?
That's specifically useful for diversity, because sometimes we have, needs that higher diversity needs in one location, yep, where in that particular location there's a lack of diversity candidates, but people may have moved away and would be willing to come back. I don't want to remind you that you did have a poll, so I'm going to throw up the poll question here to
throw
give
the
people
poll
a chance
up because
to
we're going to wrap up here and let you go on to the next person. I don't want to overstate my time.
All right, thank you. So here we go. Yep. Does your company's current diversity and inclusion training and tools give you a strategic advantage? Yes or no? Please vote.
I'd forgotten the poll. Thank you.
Yeah, I forgot it too. So I was just reminded of that. Ashley, do we have enough? Do we have quorum yet? Looks like we have a pretty.
The second piece is what I was interested in.
Pretty big spread here.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we can close this out, Ashley. There's a big majority of no's. So does your company current diversity inclusion training give you a strategic advantage? No. So of course that follows up. The next question is, what would you need first to improve that advantage? Training, software, or more people, more hands on deck?
All three is not an option. That's probably what most of you are thinking. What do you need first is my request.
One. You can have one first, and then you can have the other two later. While we give folks a chance to answer that, there was a question, Eric. how do you make sure you're including all possible titles and not missing anyone in a Boolean search? Should you do 4 or 5 different searches or put all titles in one search?
So I put
What do you
as
think?
many as you can fit in the tool you have available. If you can put 5, put 5 to start with. If you find 5 and you're looking at other resumes and you see 5 more, add another 5 if the tool lets you put that many. But at some point, it's enough. And then what you can do is you can do the not command to find everybody else. You say, I found all the people with these titles. Now put a not in front of that, or use the exclusion function in the tool you're using. It may be slightly different. And then you'll find everybody that does not have one of those. That's the complementary sister set that I talked about. Sometimes you can't do it in one search. You got to build search 1, everybody with this title or these parameters, and then search 2, everybody without those parameters or without that one parameter, and you'll find some really bizarre titles that your competition will not find.
Okay, great. So I'm afraid I think we are pretty much running up on the end of time here. We had.
Yep. You want to show the last poll results or anything?
What's that?
Was there a poll result for the last result? Did people say training, or did they say
training?
Tool? Training was it. Perfect.
Training was
Thank
number
you,
one.
everybody.
Yep. Then software, then more staff.
If anybody does want to seek out training, just go to our site, SeekOut.com, HRTX. We're giving everybody some free loot if you want to request a demo. Thank you for your time. Shally, here's my contact information. If anybody has any questions, you can email me directly or connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'll be glad to answer. I'll be back at the end for the session for Q&A.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Yeah, please stay tuned. We do have a couple of good questions for you.